afternoon, everyone. It's an incredible honor and privilege to be sitting here representing ACOMART. I would like to thank everybody that is on this illustrious panel this afternoon for making time to be here to discuss this very, very important topic. This is the inaugural webinar from ACOMART, where the plan is to discuss all issues that are related to content production, content marketing, distribution, especially content acceleration. And today we have panelists from across the continent. We are blessed to have Toyi Adewumi joins us from Nigeria. We have Claudia Noble, who joins us from South Africa. Eugene Mugua joins us from Ghana, and Justice, my co-host, Justice Sarau is the head of the East Africa region, and he will be my co-host this afternoon. And Faith Colley, our esteemed guest, is the project leader at ACOMART. Welcome, panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you. Zandile, I'm from Nairobi, though.
Oh, sorry.
I'd love to go to Ghana too, but currently I'm in Nairobi.
Apologies for that. And I would like to take this opportunity to give our panelists an opportunity to properly introduce themselves and tell us a bit more about where they fit in the industry. Toyi, should we start with you?
Okay, that's fine. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you to the ACOMART team for having me as one of the panelists today. Really honored to be here. Nice to, also meet with everyone here today as well. My name is Toyi Adewumi. I'm a film producer from Nigeria. I'm based in the commercial hub of Nigeria, so I'm in Lagos, Nigeria. And I've been in the film production business for about 3 to 4 years now. Just basically producing, so TV series, feature films. That's all I do. Yeah. Is there anything else you want me to say?
Thank you. Claudia, how about you?
Okay, hi. Thanks for having me as well. I'm Claudia Noble, and I'm from South Africa. I started off as an actress, and a very limited platform and not a lot of work for us. And as eventually just decided, I'm going into producing and I'm making my own films so I can star in them. That was a crazy idea. And then I started my own production company, and I did a short film called Pindele's Heart. In fact, it won an award in Nigeria. I went down to Nigeria to receive a TAVA award for that short film. Thank you so much. And obviously, the biggest challenge we have as producers is getting funding for films. So I've been working for a long time on a feature film, which we're just holding thumbs. We're actually going to be co-producing with the Netherlands Film Fund. So we're hoping to be shooting next year, and that will be my very first feature film. So we're very excited about that prospect. I have been working on an animation. I got some funding from the KZN Film Commission. That's the KwaZulu-Natal Film Commission. Oh. We're currently busy with 3 short animation films. And animation, as you know, takes a very long time. So that one has been a long time in production. And then I finished a few made-for-TV movies commissioned by the SABC to do a Merry Christmas story. And then we've done some short, sort of 60-minute films made for TV that have been on Mzansi. And then, of course, I did a feature film as well, but that one we haven't gotten onto any platform yet, and we're hoping that this will be the platform for us to release our film on. So actor, a bit of directing and producing, that's who I am. Thank you.
Thank you. And Eugene, please join the ladies. Tell us about you.
My name is Eugene Buga. I run a TV production company out of Nairobi. I've been in the TV industry for 11 years now, and 8 of those running my own company. We produce TV shows for almost all the major channels here in Nairobi, specializing in documentary and reality TV shows. Actually, Justice was one of my clients for a long, long time. We have about 11 TV shows in total. Currently, we actually have a new one premiering this Sunday with the top the top music band in Africa, Sauti Sol, and very excited to be here.
Thank you, and thank you for that. We have also Richard on the line. I'm not sure if Richard is ready to join us. There's no video yet. Richard is a writer, producer, director, and former president of the Film Directors Guild of Ghana, and we look forward to really having a serious discussion with him about development of the film industry in Africa as a whole. At this point, I'd like to hand over to my co-host, Justus. Justus, what are your thoughts this afternoon?
Wow, good evening, good afternoon, and jumbo to everyone watching us from wherever you are. I think I'll kickstart it with, the preamble. It's interesting, they gave me this part. Storyteller to do the preamble, ha ha ha. But I'll kick it out on what I'll call the BC, the before Corona. What did we know? In the first decade of the 21st century, we have seen a growing sense of self-esteem and global consumer African. Can you go down the sound there? I think. Thank you.
Hello, Richard. Apologies, Justus. Richard? Welcome. The webinar has started. I think Richard is still trying to connect. Do you want to continue, Justus?
Okay, fair enough. Where was I? I was saying, for the first decade of the 21st century, we've seen a growing sense of self-esteem and global consumed, what I'll call African cultural expression through music, film, TV, fashion, contemporary art, etc., etc. However, the digital revolution brought about unprecedented change in how we create, produce, distribute, broadcast, and indeed consume the mentioned content. It's worth noting that the cultural and the creative industries in Africa have made significant and indeed remarkable success, driven by what I'll call the big three: the large and youthful population, high rate of urbanization, and the quick uptake of the digital technologies. Are we there yet? Not quite. The industries, but the success of what I've mentioned has been built on a fragile, entrepreneur-driven model, which remains vulnerable to exogenous risk. And with that in mind, I'll fast forward to maybe where we kickstart this conversation, where the creative industries, we can't ignore COVID-19, what it has done to the industry. And now with that in mind, I'll start with quoting a guy maybe is familiar to so many of us, called George Gashara Fund, who said, and I quote, "Creative economies have learned two major things as far as COVID-19 is concerned. One, the place of the creative industries during a crisis. Two, the fragility of the creative businesses." To kickstart this whole conversation, I'll throw my first question to two people, Toyin and my good friend Eugene. With all that said and done, what's the future? How does it look like? What future do you see for the creative industry post-COVID?
Okay, well, you mentioned my name first, so I guess I'll go first. Today seems to be my first day, right? So, I mean, good and valid question you've asked, Justus. I think for me, the reality is where we are today, nobody's really certain on what the future would look like, because we don't even know what the future, post-COVID is. We haven't experienced this before. We don't know how soon that future, would come. but then life goes on. We need to keep living before, you know, that future comes. And so for the film industry, I think it's a mix of so many things. From the production end, producers need to now be more creative with how we get production going in a very safe way, because we can't afford to just sit down for so long without doing anything. So the creative juices need to keep flowing. Producers now need to be more safety conscious. I think one of our roles as producers now is to become safety managers as well, to be sure that every cast and crew member on our set, you know, are safe and go back to their families, you know, safe without the COVID, without going back home with the COVID, right? So that's one end to it. The other one would be the distribution end of things. So now cinemas are all shut. Public screening, you know, is practically not happening. So we are all having to rely on online distribution. And for me, that's like the biggest, what's the word now? That's like the biggest new thing. So I see a lot of distribution now happening online. And, you know, I feel like this is a perfect time for ACOMAT to actually, you know, come on board. It almost just feels like somebody saw this coming and sort of just keyed into it. So as producers, it's two things, like I said. So first, from the production end, now also wearing the cap of a safety manager. And on the other end, now reaching out to distributors with online platforms that can help get those contents out there, because what we can rely on now is mainstream TV and online distribution. So that's what I see in terms of what the future would look like.
Thank you very much. We'll definitely touch a lot on the distribution. Let's hear from you, Jean. What's your take?
Thanks, JT. I want to start by reading a quote just like you. It's by Toni Morrison, and it says, "In times of dread, artists must never choose to remain silent. This is precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal." And I found this very, very useful for me, especially towards the beginning of the pandemic when everything was shutting down. And GT, I think from, at least personally from my production house, what we found in terms of the future of what our industry holds is entertainment alone doesn't cut it. Now more than ever, people need hope. And here in Kenya, we did something interesting. We produced a TV musical, but instead of just having performances, we also had these stories of hope from different frontline workers and regular people doing great things for others. And surprisingly, something that had never happened before in the Kenyan TV space, and GT will back me up on this, we got 11 of the major TV stations in Kenya to play it at the same time at no charge. So this is something ideally like will never have happened. We'll never have gotten competing media houses to work together prior, were it not for the pandemic. And I think for me, I see a very bright future and a deep need for storytelling, the African story particularly, more than ever, because it's becoming apparent that we'll be stuck with this pandemic a bit longer than everybody else. I was speaking to a filmmaker from London, and they were telling me now they're preparing to go on holiday because Italy, which was worst hit a few months ago, now only has 170 cases. And here in Kenya, now we're doing 1,000 cases a day. And unless we stand up and shape the narrative for ourselves, of course, you know, we always get the rare end of the narrative from the global stage. So I think like now more than ever, our industry is more useful. And I see the future of storytelling very bright in the coming days.
Interesting. Thanks to Ian, thanks Eugene. Claudia, interesting perspective from those two. The question is then to you is, where and how do we begin to rebuild the industry?
I think that from my perspective, what I've been seeing is that we really do have an opportunity at the moment to do things differently. I believe there were 2 film crews. The one was, for example, I can't remember where they were from, but they actually got their entire team together in a building. They were sleeping over there. Everybody was tested for COVID, and they were still shooting their program. Because they knew that everybody, as well as the cast, the actors, everyone, had been tested, quarantined together, and they made sure that they were keeping safe, that each and every one of them had a negative result, and they were continuing to shoot their film. And I think this is exactly what we need to do, is actually have a situation. I mean, if you look at horror stories, they all happen in a house. So we need to get our cast and our crew into a house and shoot our horror stories. Or if we want to do a reality TV show, it's more like the Big Brother thing now. Again, testing everybody and getting them into the house. They've got all the sports players in order for them to start playing basketball again. They're all living in Disneyland in Florida, and they've kept them there together. So the team has all been tested, everybody's quarantined, they're coming out and making sure that they're regularly tested by their doctors, and they're able to then train, and eventually they're going to play not to an audience, but they're still going to be able to get the sport because they've sacrificed to be together for 3 months so that they can do that. And I think that's the way it's going to have to go. If we're going to, the best thing for us to do is, for example, a soapy, or as I said, some kind of horror film, but we have to start writing our stories differently so that our stories can adapt to the situation that we currently find ourselves in. Or of course, you know, we're going to be then shooting films. Like if you look at a lot of soapies, they're always very relative to what's happening at the moment. So you could actually have a situation where everybody's shooting and they're wearing their masks. But it's really a scary situation. So we really do have to adapt. I went for an audition the other day, and okay, we all came in, we had our mask on, but when we had to go into the audition room, we had to take our mask off. And I left there, I was worried, you know, and to think, okay, maybe in that room something would have taken place. And they wanted to sign a form to say, if you became sick, you know, you have an indemnity form. But I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer is getting your team together, getting everybody tested, and being together in one space if it's going to be 3 months or however long your production is going to be for. I think that's the only way we're going to do it. And then, sorry if I want to just add, in terms of then content, I think the people out there are hungry for content. This is the opportunity that we must actually use to get our content out there, because everybody that is not able to work or that's working at home is sitting in front of their channels, going through every single series that's available. What can we watch? So it is really our opportunity not to sit back as filmmakers and say, okay, we'll wait for COVID to be over, but find a way in which we can produce so that we can be giving them the content during this time.
Interesting take. Interesting. Zandile, just allow me to throw a question to Faye there as a follow-up to what Claudia has said. So Faye, there's been a mention about African stories, it's time we go back to the field, but we play safe. What's your take on that as far as doing what we know best?
Hi, first of all, I'll start by introducing myself. I didn't get a chance to. My name is Faith Colley. I have worked as a television producer in East Africa for over 15 years. Today I had a very nostalgic moment when a former colleague shared, you know, the journey of technology over the years, and I could see Betacam tapes and reel-to-reel sound. I can remember using a Nagra to record sound on a boom. So I started at the very bottom of the pile, but with time grew. I've worked on different genres and formats of TV production, documentaries, scripted formats, non-scripted formats. I've also worked in the news world. And at the moment, I work as one of the project leads for the Africa Content Marketplace, which is basically a content acceleration platform for producers. And we'll be talking more about it. So just to come back to your question, just as on sorry, just a second. You've said that yes, we have a crisis at hand. It's true. COVID came. No one had expected it. It's unprecedented. However, somebody also said that never waste a good crisis. Never waste a good crisis. And as much as we are in one, there are opportunities as well. So Claudia has talked about changing the way we tell our stories. Over the past few weeks, I've been working with 1 or 2 script writers, and I've been helping them go through their scripts. And one of the things that we were trying to do with them is stories that have got, you know, contact, or stories that have got actors who are older or very young. We have to retell them. But over and above that, there's a certain sense of opportunity in terms of distribution, whereby you find that people, in a way, want to watch shows that they once watched at a certain period and space in time. And I guess it's a sense of nostalgia in the sense that you're looking for safety because we are in uncertain times. So there's a certain sense of catharsis or a certain sense of release, or you feel good when you go and watch content that you watched when you were in a certain space. So for producers who have got a back catalog of content, this is a very good opportunity to get that content out in the platforms that are available. I wish more of our broadcasters would seriously consider that, because the back catalog offers some sense of connection between audiences. So you'll get people logging in. I've been getting a lot of inquiries from people from some of the shows that are producing. Where can we watch this show? I would really like to watch it at this time. It would also open up opportunities for actors to get residual income because a lot of actors are at home. They don't have work at the moment. And also for producers, you can make a little bit of money that you can use to create more content. So in as much as we're in a crisis, there's a sense of opportunity for old content that is currently in existence. If you have any of that catalog, you might be seated there as a producer, so if I have a few shows and I don't know what to do with them, feel free to connect with us at ACOMART. We'll guide you accordingly on what to do. In terms of storytelling, like I said, there's a serious challenge in the sense that there are spaces you can't go to anymore because you need to protect your cast and your crew. So as Claudia said, do we need to consider maybe housing people somewhere? Yes, we could, but also we also have to realize that our African budgets are not too high. And also the new measures that have been put in place by governments and the jurisdictions we are in have also come with a cost to them, because like right now, you need a medic on set. It's something that we had not, if you're in production, you had not budgeted for it. But right now, it's a necessity. Yes, it's creating a job for somebody or people, but there's a certain cost that comes to it. However, you can, as a producer, you can creatively still manage your costs by the way you write your scripts and still be able to protect your cast and your crew to ensure that everybody feels safe on set. It's very important for producers to make people feel secure. Something else that I've also noticed, and as we live in the new normal, is there's a sense of behavioral change where people, even in jurisdictions where people are allowed to gather in limited numbers, people are not too far to move into those spaces. For instance, in some countries, some religious spaces are open, but people would rather watch or consume the content while in the safety of their homes. So that in a way will affect cinemas. It might take time for cinemas to get the numbers that they had before. And it might take time also to get audiences to start moving into cinema spaces because they are confined. So people still, in a way, there's a certain sense of behavioral change on how people are consuming their content. You either gather around a television, which is the traditional way, you gather around a screen, or there's a shift of the gears whereby now everybody is consuming their content either on phone or consuming it on a tablet, or if you have a computer. So that behavioral change also has created an opportunity for us as content producers on getting our content into spaces that people can consume at their convenience when they have the time, and they can also decide on what they want to watch, because television still uses a schedule. So if you're scheduled to watch an episode at 7 p.m., if you don't catch it at 7 p.m., you may either have to wait for it to be recasted, or you lose it altogether. But audiences now want to watch their content when they want to, how they want to, and in whatever space. So all this has also brought opportunities for us as producers, and also for distributors to be a bit more creative on where to get this content so that audiences can access it. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, over to you, Zandile, for the next round of questions.
Thank you, Faith. I've heard you touch on and all of the important aspects about how the aspects that affect the producers, including restricted African budgets and having to do all this in the new normal post-COVID. I've also heard you, Claudia, talking about that the opportunities are there because audiences are hungry for content. But now let's get to the second aspect of this discussion, which is we have the producers that are being called on by Eugene to get creative and to not stop working. We've got the audiences that are hungry, but in between there is a link where the content needs to then find a home, it needs to be distributed, it needs to reach the end user in ACOMART space, the broadcaster. And at that point, how do we, let me ask the question this way, how do we build an ecosystem that can effectively enable the commercialization of this content? Because Faith has also touched on that there are back catalogs that are there. It's not only new content that is in demand. So at this point, how do we then, as Africans, build an African ecosystem to ensure that there is commercialization of equitable commercialization of this content and that producers actually get the return on their investments? Eugene, would you like to take this one?
Yes, to be honest with you, the question you asked, I'm looking for answers for the same. I've been frustrated for quite a bit about distribution, honestly, and some of this I've shared with Justice. For the last couple of years, I've been attending the markets, MIPCOM, MIPTV, Discop, and every time I always feel like I just came back from holiday because there's not much we get. I think the last one must have been last October at MIPCOM, where I attended, of course, the market, and there's so little. So first of all, the big markets have no space for us. It's very difficult to interact with anybody if you don't have an intermediary like we hope ACOMART will be. It ends up, because like for the Kenyan market, we don't really have a systemized way of going about it. We have the Kenyan Film Commission here that has tried to do some work at Discord to try and allow us to go in as a huge group, but rarely does it. It hasn't really borne any fruit. So at the moment, currently, what we do is like on my part, I have to literally take myself to France, take myself to South Africa, and try and distribute this content myself, and it's difficult. So I think I want to throw this back to you because I also need an answer to this question.
Richard, I see Richard is connected to audio. Richard, are you there? Okay, Richard is not with us yet. Claudia, I'd like to hear from you. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I can certainly echo what Eugene has said because it's what we've all been battling with. Same story, I've had the same experiences going to markets year after year, speaking to people. I mean, when I was in Canada at a market, I won't say which market it was, but they actually arranged one-on-one meetings with us to meet distributors. And he just simply said to me, it's too African for us, just like that. They're not interested in our content. I was like blown away. He wasn't even subtle, nothing. Sorry, it's too African for us. And you went from one person to the next and you spoke and you gave your pitch and you were passionate about your project and you just did whatever you could. But you just get to these brick walls time after time and time again. Our broadcasters would say to us, we finished a production, they sponsored the festival, our film played at the festival, they loved the film and said, oh, would you give it to us because we don't have money right now.
That does sound like SABC in South Africa.
I don't want to mention that right now. I mean, and those who do pay us, then pay us so little, it costs 5 times more for us to make the film, because like you mentioned earlier on, it was a bright idea for me to think of, but of course that's a soccer, a baseball team that's got lots of money, so they can put them up in a hotel and feed everybody 3-4 meals a day, but how do we do that, So then the budget of our film is like 100%, and we get 10% of that when we sell the film to a broadcaster who has unlimited amount of times that they will broadcast it. So this is our biggest challenge, and this is why we're hoping to get the answers, you know. I mean, I'd love if we had an African Netflix, and that's what we're hoping ACOMART will do for us, because that is so needed right now. As producers, we're sitting with the content in our cupboards and we cannot get it out there. And you know, we're hoping that that someone out there is going to give us this answer, but it's something that we really need more than anything else.
Wow, thank you for that. Faith, do you want to talk briefly about what is available on ACOMAT in response to this?
So I'll start by, in a way, answering your question as I also incorporate what ACOMAT has for producers across Africa. So you asked whether there's how we can build an ecosystem that can effectively enable us to commercialize our Afrocentric content.
Yes.
So one of the things, okay, so African content is unique in the sense that it tells our stories, it represents our realities and who we are as a people. So as ACOMAT, we realize that we actually need a space for our own African content, because the existing platforms that are there can only take so much. So what happens to the rest of the content? So what we decided as ACOMAT is we need to help African producers realize that there's a bigger market beyond our regions. For instance, Claudia, I would like to see your content, not just, how can I access your content if I wanted to now? I don't have access maybe to SABC or any of the South Africa platforms. And unless it's put on a platform that can cut across Africa or the world, I may not be able to access it. So there's a very serious need for an indigenous platform that can take in all this content that cannot end up in those international platforms that currently exist. Another way that the ecosystem could work for us is in the sense of localization, so that it can also open up for us markets in other species. We have, for instance, we have a population of over 100 million people in Ethiopia, and they speak Amharic. And probably for all of us producers here, the content we are creating, all we've produced is in English. So that locks out that market. We have a big population of French speakers who would like to access our English content, but they're not able to access that content because it's in English. Very few of us have thought of localization, and by localization I mean that if, say for instance, it's an English short film, it's dubbed over in French or in Portuguese or in Spanish or whatever other territory you want to go into. It also means, like, for instance, your subtitling considers that if, say for instance, like I shoot my content in English and Kiswahili, so I need to start thinking when I'm editing that the bits that are in Kiswahili, I need to translate them into English. So that opens up and unlocks a new market. So what we as ACOMAT do, if you come to us and you approach us and sign up on our platform, we connect you to this market. There's a very, very big market in Brazil for content, but who's unlocking it? No one. We need to localize the content so that that content can be accessible in that region. So there's like you said, yes, there's a need for an African indigenous platform that can accept our content with all its challenges, because you could shoot your content and you take it to a certain platform and they say the specs are too low. You need to have certain very high specs. But then with our data in Africa, how many people can stream 4K video in Africa? How many people can stream? We're now going to 12K or 8K, you know. So we need African problems, need African solutions. And that's why ACOMAT exists. The other thing that is very important is for co-productions. And in this COVID space we are in, because we are confined, but we have all these other platforms, social media. If, say, for instance, I've always loved watching a certain Nigerian film, and the producer, and I Google and I realize who the producer is, maybe it's time that I reached out to that producer and said, hey, hi, I'm Faith. I would like us to partner in the next production and let's see what we can do. This is the time to have those conversations using social media and whatever other tools that exist, because co-productions are the way to go. It would be very interesting to see an East, West, South co-production. I mean, that's like the holy grail of audiences. You can imagine watching a film with a Nigerian, a film with Kenyans, and a film with South Africans. I mean, you can imagine how rich that story can be and how many audiences it can cut across, and even some people from North and Francophone Africa. So that's what we need to start thinking as producers. In as much as we are telling stories about our regions, what other stories can we tell beyond our region, so that if, say, for instance, you have a film that has a Cameroonian, that means you have access to both Anglophone and Francophone audiences in Africa. If you have a film whereby you're working with a Nigerian producer, that opens up another market for me as an East African producer. So synergies are really, really important during this time. And we also need to start also thinking of embracing new technologies. As producers, we work in a certain way. I'm saying as producers because I'm a producer as well. There's a way we've been doing business, and I think COVID has just shaken us and shown us that it cannot be business as usual. There's a disruption. You cannot wait for your content to be commissioned or to be licensed by a broadcaster only. There's a disruption that we need to look at, accept that it's happened, and embrace it totally, by either working with the existing platforms or also working with user-generated platforms whereby you put up your content, but it cannot be business as usual, thanks to the space we're currently in. Yeah.
Thank you, Faith. Thank you for that. And I'd like to then ask that we are saying now that there is demand, that the content is there. We've got great advice from the likes of Faith on how producers can go about producing and distributing their content. And we now have the newcomer on the block, that is the home of Afrocentric content. That would be ACOMART. Then the next step, if all of that, for me, it sounds like the beginning of a really robust that is going to help us actually achieve the goal of ensuring that the TV and the film industry in Africa is actually resurrected from where it's at right now because of challenges like COVID. And Toi, do you have anything to add in this regard about innovation and technology and all the aspects that we've touched on?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Can you take that again?
Oh, okay, question was, would you like to add anything at this point related to working innovatively and creatively and the role of technology in how we do things going forward?
All right, yeah, thank you. I think it's pretty straightforward, and straightforward being that, and I'll backtrack a bit. I think we need to get to a point where we all play to our strengths. And so what I mean is, it's a whole value chain, okay? So the set person does the set design, that's his or her job on the production. The actors, they act their roles, that's their job in the production. The screenwriter does that. I think we need to clearly define the end product, which is the distribution network part of things. I think we also need to have that clearly defined. And so as a producer, because we are creatives, all we think about is getting a good story and getting a good production. And so when it comes to what then happens to that product, it's not our core area, it's not our area of strength. And I think the more we have people who have that skill, who have that ability, you know, who are familiar with technology and how to utilize it, who are familiar with distribution. I mean, you mentioned, for instance, earlier that there's a whole market in Brazil. A lot of us producers don't know that, right? And so I think once we can separate that value chain and have each player play to their strengths, I think we would see, you know, more outcomes in the industry. And as producers, that would take us away from getting our resources tied down in productions, and years after we haven't recouped, you know, what we spent, not to even talk of making profits. You know, and that's how I would want to approach it, to say the technology part of distribution, I would appreciate if we have people who have that experience, who can come into the industry to say, you know, this is where I want to play. So everybody is not an actor, everybody is not a director, everybody is not a producer. And so what that happens is Toyin produces this fantastic movie, and I know that I can then hand it over to, you know, this aggregator or distributor or sales agent who takes it from there. And all I get is, you know, the bank alert saying XYZ has been paid into my bank because my movie has been, you know, distributed. Or I get people chatting me up on social media to say, oh, you're the producer of this fantastic movie. I live in Germany. I just watched your movie. I really liked it. You know, that's how I see it. I think we all just need to start playing to our strengths versus have, so you're the producer, you're also the one doing the marketing. I mean, Eugene said, for instance, he travels to all those markets. But imagine if we have people who have that skill. And so when Eugene is done with his production, he hands it over to, you know, that team, and then he can focus on what his core strength is, which is production. Because I mean,
sorry to cut you. I wanted to say, and we now do have a marketplace for
Afrocentric. Exactly. I think that would really help.
I would like to take a question from the audience. It's how much are producers looking at what audiences beyond Africa are looking for in terms of African film? Audiences beyond festivals, that is. Is there any research being done or could be done? Justice.
Wow, that's a hard one.
I know Eugene would like to help you on this one. So Justice.
I'm not so sure of numbers really, because now that sort of now talks about the research out there. But the good thing with data analytics and all this AI coming up right now, there's a clever way of sort of figuring it out. I'm not so sure. Maybe Eugene can jump in on that. Do you know the numbers really?
No, I don't know of any research being done, but you know, the thing again, just, and this goes back to the questions that Zandile asked about using technology. I think for us, how we sort of gauge now, you know, because with things like Twitter and being able to post some snippets of your work on YouTube, you can sort of quickly get feedback from the audience and see where they're at. I think for some of the interesting bits, like for instance, for us when we post our trailers, we're always keen to see when when you can go on the statistics page of whatever social media platform you're using and sort of see which countries you have interest from, or every now and then when you get a tweet from someone in Uganda or Tanzania or a country that's not yours saying, you know, how can we get this in our country? So I don't know if there's any research being done per se, but I think technology actively helps you get sort of like this small bits of information back from your audience about what they want and where they're at in different parts of the world. I don't know if this answers your question in any way.
It does very much. And for me, where the power of technology comes in is that with a platform like ACOMART, there are actually analytics being done where content producers get to get a view of where their content has gone. And that's where the equitable promotion of content comes in. Because if there's transparency in where your content has gone and how well it's doing there, then the discussion is very clear about compensation for the content. We have an audience asking for Shiola to be given an opportunity to speak. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Hello, everyone. It was pretty difficult getting into the meeting because I was scheduled with some other stuff at the same time. So I'm happy to be here.
Is that technology?
Africa technology.
Glad to hear about African market.
Okay, so I think we all in agreement that there is a space for the distribution and equitable marketing and promotion of Afrocentric content. And now ACOMART has launched on the market, and at this point I'd like to put it to you that if there are plans to properly get new audiences for content, and this is across the globe. There are plans for content producers to get to get a view of where their content is going, so that they actually start making better business decisions. And there's also a platform that is dedicated to the business side of things, so that their creatives can do creative things. But I'd also need to ask this question. And beyond all of this, what other assistance do you think producers need to make their productions come to life?
Is that question for me?
You can take it.
Okay, because I went out of the meeting just now. That's it. I'm having some interferences from work. So what I was trying to say is the fact that producers across Africa, I know it's been really difficult. I've had to be in various forums where we've talked about how distribution can get done for movies, for series, and how to monetize content. The integration of ACOMART is the perfect way to do it. I applaud the team members for coming up with something as genius as this. But I would like to say that more than often, when we talk about production, most of the content that are not being distributed have peculiar challenges that the producers do need to work on. One of it is the fact that you must prepare your production for export. When I mean preparing your production for export, that means that you must have your production ready to be dubbed into various languages. So a lady talked about the fact that Brazil is an open market. They speak Portuguese in Brazil. How many African content have the M&Es, that's the music and effects, and the audio separated for them to have the dialogue, dubbed and spoken in Portuguese language? So we have to be ready for that. We also have to understand what Africa offers, understanding the Africa as a whole. Africa is 54 countries, and we need to know that if you're producing in Kenya, you're producing in Uganda, you have to produce for the entire continent. So we need to look at production in that light and look at it as a business. I understand the fact that most of us are creatives and we like to look at our content as, oh, I've just produced one of the best content, series, film. But is it exportable? Can it be sold? What are the key factors in that content because you have so many other people, you have to understand competition, you have to understand the fact that the movie industry or the content industry is the perfect market where there are so many players. So there are people, and we have limited number of mediums where you can distribute. It's good enough that we have VODs, SVOD, TVOD, AVOD coming up now to open up the market. Before, it used to be the free-to-air windows, and then it used to be the pay TV windows. But we need to prepare for export at all times, have that at our mindset. Right now, you can even still go back to your catalog and recalibrate your catalog for export. And I believe that using that and working with ACOMART, we would be able to take our content across the globe. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for that. And panelists, would anyone else like to touch on maybe training needs that are out there for producers, especially those that are starting up in the industry at the moment?
I could add. Oh, Richard is there.
Hello, Richard. Claudia, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I think one of the biggest challenges that all producers have is funding for our films. When we get funding from the different film organizations, there's always we have huge challenges where that's concerned. So, for example, I would like if we also just have a place where we can give content like Netflix does. They don't just take content; they also fund content to be made. So, if I could ask Faith if that is something that ACOMAT will also be doing for producers. Could we be submitting, and all the other participants who are watching would probably also like to know, can they submit their ideas? And will there be some kind of funding that could happen? Earlier on, you also spoke about the fact that we should be doing co-productions. And that is something, when you're watching television, the Chinese have a lot of money right now. So every Hollywood film that comes out, there's a Chinese co-production. It's happening in China, or they're traveling to Paris, or they're going to Scotland. They're all over because these are all co-productions, and everyone in that country is contributing something to get that film made. So if we could, for example, from South Africa with Kenya, have a co-production, and then it be funded by ACOMART. Is that something that they're going to be looking at? Because I think that is a huge need for all producers, is to know that they have funding for their projects that are in development.
Okay. Faith, can I give you an opportunity to say something?
Yeah, Claudia, thanks for that. Yes. So the thing, and also in a way to answer your questions, Andile, what are the challenges that film makers and TV series or even documentary creators are facing? So we talked about distribution. And we said, yes, ACOMAT has a solution for that, for distribution. If you talk to us, we're going to work together. The second thing, I think, is training. As producers, we need to start as creatives, we get very precious with our content. And I'm also speaking as somebody who has content, whereby once you create something, it's your baby, you're not willing to let it go. But how will you make money if your content is stuck in a drive somewhere? Mm-hmm. Would you rather not have that content out there? Let people watch it. Let people challenge you for it. You'll get a little money. Your actors will get their residual income. But then you have a portfolio that is out there, rather than say, oh, this is my film. I spent so much money. I have to get an X amount of money. And until I get it, it stays in a drive. Mm-hmm. And there goes the death of a lot of good African content that is gathering dust, either in the belly of CPUs or in the mm-hmm. belly of hardwoods. Yeah. We are saying to you, give us that content as ACOMAT. We have a virtual screening room. You do not have to jump on a plane anymore, unless you want to go on holiday, like you do. And come up with all these beautiful catalogs and merchandise from all these big distributors and other people, and then you put it somewhere in a corner. I was at a film market at the beginning of the year, and I have a corner I've not even opened the catalogs, I've not had time. But we have a virtual screening room whereby we are connecting buyers and sellers. If you're a content buyer, rather than deal with us producers, and we are quite emotional, I must say, if you come and tell me, Faith, your film is, I'm like, oh, but I put so much energy. No, we are the B connecting you to the A and to the C. So you log on to this virtual screening room and you watch whatever is there and you bid for the content. So as a producer, your content is bidded for competitive. I'm from Kenya, and there's a season in Kenya, I call it the pilot season. It's between January and March. There's usually no work, but people are very, very busy. And I call my producer friends, what are we doing? Piloting. What are you piloting? Where are you taking it? Then what happens to those pilots? They're not picked up by the broadcasters, or they're not picked up by the SVOD, or your short film or your trailer ends up nowhere. You've spent money. You've gathered favors from your family members, from all your friends. Cast and crew are there the whole day under the sun. We just want this thing to work. But where does that content end up? Give us those pilots. We could help you connect with somebody who's willing to put in a little bit of money, or we could guide you on how to shape this and make it better. Mm-hmm. So that comes to your question, Claudia, about funding. Is ACOMAT going to fund African filmmakers? We hope that we are going to get there one day. But right now, we want all your, whatever content you have, or if you're planning to create or produce content in the next near future, talk to us. We are going to guide you and tell you, okay, fine. If you want to unlock this market, this is what you need to factor in. If you have these actors are popular in region X, Y, Z. When you're editing your content, and Shiola mentioned it perfectly, that you need to edit your content in such a way that even the tracks, the way you need to leave your tracks open in such a way that a dub can be done either in French or Portuguese or in Spanish or in Italian or even Chinese, whatever language the content could go to. Don't lock all your sound. And that's what a lot of us have done because we didn't know any better. So we guide you and we tell you, okay, fine, this is what you need to do. Things like music clearing rights. You have a good film, you have a good series, but it cannot go anywhere because your music is not cleared properly. You don't, as soon as that content goes out, I mean, you're served by a legal suit. What do you do with it? So as ACOMART, we are partnering with producers. We want to partner with you producers and tell you, hey, before you pick up that script and roll, take one, scene one, whatever, of your camera, this is what you need to factor in. When you're writing your scripts, if you want to access and unlock a certain market, this is what you need to consider. And of course, I mean, with your creative license, but with guidance. In terms of research, we need to start relying on research to help us also create stories that can sell. For instance, in some territories, rom-coms are very popular. So if you decide to invest on a very heavy historical film, it might do well in a certain territory, but in a certain region, it might not do too well. But in certain regions, historical content is so popular, people want to watch, you know, fact-based films. So you're aware that if you go to territory Y and they have this fact-based film, it's going to do well, but it may not do well in a certain region. So like I've said, rather than spend too much money hopping onto those flights, unless you want to go on holiday, sign up on the on the ACOMART screening room. We have content buyers who are actually seriously seeking content. And even if you have a pilot, one episode, it's worth talking to us. We can guide you on how to go ahead. Or even load it there and just see what happens to it. So Claudia, yes, funding, but not immediately, but in the very near future. And we'll work together to see how we can tell our stories in a compelling way, but also with the right budgets. Yeah, I hope I've answered your question. Yeah.
Toyi, would you like to add to that?
I think it's very similar to what Claudia already talked about. So it starts with the funding, also the legal part as well. So I think it's just that whole thing of filmmakers getting so deep into just being creative and not considering the business and the commercial side of that creativity, you know. And it's okay if it's not your area of strength, but just ensure that you have people who are skilled in those areas, you know, in your close range. So thinking about the legal aspect as well. Can I really sell this thing? Do I have the IP? Is somebody going to come someday to make claims to, you know, the copyright of this movie I have, you know, put my sweat and blood into? So I think for me, I would really want to focus on the legal part. I think that's one area film producers, both young and new, need to start to look at. There's no point having a very beautiful story, a good quality production, but then the legal side of things are not in place and you can't then, you know, monetize what you've done. So yeah, for me, it would be, you know, in addition to what Claudia talked about, it would be also paying attention to the legal side and just ensuring that you have the copyright for what you're doing.
Thank you for that. And I'd like to add that embedded in the registration process on the ACOMART site platform, there is a verification process where ACOMART, you upload documents and then ACOMART actually ensures that what you say is correct, that you are the rightful owner of this content. So that has been built into how ACOMART does business to ensure that once a producer uploads content, that there are no funny issues that come up that you have just referenced right now. Just as I know you have a question for the panelists regarding the just other general funding for productions?
Before I go to that, I have literally one question to Shileola. I don't know if I've gotten her name right. At what point do we consult the distributors? We meaning the producers. At what point do we engage specific distributors?
To be from planning, when you are set to start filming, the distributors must be aware. More than often, when we plan to produce, you might realize that maybe after producing 10 episodes, you then have to cut back because you want to make the story much more interesting, or you just want to expand it further. Maybe it goes you go from 10 to 13, or you go from, but just have that plan at pre-production, and then begin to communicate with the distributors once you have started rolling the cameras, and have a timeline. I realize that most productions or most producers do not have timelines to when the production would when I mean timeline, that means the lead time. So it's not when you're filming on set that is the final time that your production would be ready. You must have done your final mix and you're exporting. So the first viewing and then the final editorial, where you have to maybe chop down more scenes to make the story much more interesting and much more engaging, or you then want to add some B-rolls or some takeaways or make some other film takes out there just to add to the content to make it much more interesting. So always have that at pre-production stage to say that, this production, I will be done with it in 6 months or 9 months. And then the distributor is aware that I can start selling. Secondly, you must prepare your marketing document just at the same time when you start planning to film. It's much more better that way. Start putting the word out there. Create your poster design. More than often, get a real photo shoot done. Not just taking the pictures of the characters and then putting it together. You must have a marketing pitch document which tells either the distributor or the commissioner, the content commissioner, when exactly this content would be ready, what the content would look like at the point of at the point of submitting it. And the distributor can then begin to engage other networks and tell them, I would have this content ready for you, and then it would either be exclusive or it would not be exclusive. When it comes to the multi-layered audiences, that is where you have to go outside your core territory. For us, in my company, we produce in English, and then we prepare to dub into French, Portuguese, and then there's some other new territories opening us for us, and that's the Caribbean territory. What we always would do is to give about 6 months after the first production is out, whereby you have the first licensee take the content exclusively. Once the first licensee, that could also be a distributor, could be a network, takes that content, you must begin to pitch to your multilingual audience at the same time. So, because you're not going to sign off a deal in 1 month. Even when they tell you they like it, you have to go back and forth. More than often, legal takes more time because you have to be ready. As you're signing a document, just be ready that, there's a saying in Nigeria, in my local language, that says that the day you start a friendship is the day you must prepare for the enmity between you and that friend. So all legal documents must protect you, and at the same time, they must protect the company that is licensing from you. So you must be aware of that from the outset. So those are the things. That's why you have to pitch early, start communicating early, and then you realize that it becomes a cycle whereby the distributors or the licensees know that, every year I can get the content from you in a round cycle of 9 months or 12 months, and that's how you can begin to push your content. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have one more question that I'll throw into Toyin and Eugene. As producers, here we are talking of a new space, new market, digital, etc. Are we, as producers, ready for the new territory as far as training aspects are concerned? Are we willing to jig our business strategy as well?
Should I go first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, I must apologize. If you see me, I'm logged a few times. Someone asked me for a link to join, and I sent them the link that I got. So now they're joining us speakers. My apologies for that. JT, yes, at least I can speak for my company. And you know, you've worked with me for a long time. We are really open to, part of the reason I'm very happy for this conversation, because I'm learning a lot personally from listening to everyone. We, for me personally, and for a lot of the producers that I know as well, people are hungry for ways to improve themselves, because I think one of the biggest things, one of the biggest problems we've had is just a knowledge gap. I've signed up with quite a few regional distributors and platforms similar to ACOMART. I won't mention their names because they're all the big organizations that you know. But to be honest with you, none of them has ever really started me to give me personalized information like this. For the most part, I think what I usually get is, you sign up at the beginning, maybe there's 1 deal or 2 deals, but at the end of it, you just end up being part of the contributing list to their huge catalog. And you never really get any information to improve. So for us, like a lot of the information, all of this information you're giving, we are very willing to take it, change it, change how we do things and improve very quickly, so that we are able to, because at the end of the day, your win is our win. So yes, we on our end, we're very, very willing and able to take these learnings and improve on them very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, so there's something I didn't say when I introduced myself earlier. I actually have a background in human resource management. You know, that's what I did before I crossed into film production. And so for me, training, improving, self-improvement, self-development is my background. You know, and so yes, so the answer is yes. This is something that we always do. I mean, for us, we also always ensure that our next production is better than the previous one. So we always take learning from what we had done previously, what can be better, and then we improve on that in, you know, what next we do. And also because I have the background in HR, I've directly just brought that into the film production as well. So everything we're doing, I'm, you know, also applying the HR lens, you know, what's the process, what structures are we doing, and all of that. So yes, to your question, it's a capital yes. We always have to keep improving and keep learning. That's how you get better, really. That's the only way you can improve and make the world a better place.
Okay, thank you. Back to Zandile, and maybe if you have some questions from our audience.
We actually do, thank you. We have a question. Hello, Faith, can you share with us the audience appetite for language content? Do you have headline market data you can share with us?
Okay, so for language content, does that mean like indigenous African languages? Sorry, that question is
I also took it as that, because the other question from a different participant is, hello, what about French content? So I think people are generally interested in, is there appetite for my indigenous language?
Yes, of course, there is appetite for indigenous language content. Don't forget, language has a way of connecting with people, and especially when telling stories that tag to your heartstream. So if, say, for instance, you have a film in Hausa or Kikuyu or Zulu, yes, there's an audience for it. It's African content. These are our languages. We need to love them. We need to embrace them, because also some of these languages are disappearing really, really fast. There's a generation of our young ones who may not be able to learn these languages, but once we put them up on some of these spaces, and especially in the online spaces, we also are able to preserve culture. So if you do have indigenous language content, yes, we are very keen on that, and we are willing to work and partner with you. What was the second question in regard to French content? Yes, we have a very big population of French speakers in Africa and in the diaspora. So there's demand for French content. That's why I even mentioned that you could shoot a film, say for instance, in English and dub it into French. That cuts across the different Francophone countries in Africa and also across to the diaspora. And I think I've answered those two questions, unless there's something.
You have, thank you, but I've got a follow-up one.
Yes.
This one is from Robert Asimba. I wish also ACOMART could come up with info on what kind of films are on demand and in which region. So, because that helps the producers know the ready markets that are available and hence think commercially on that. You mentioned Brazil, but what sells in Brazil? What genre?
Okay, yes, we are willing to share that information and data. Data is one of the big things we are going to do as ACOMAT, and we are doing at the moment, whereby if you sign up onto our platform, of course, you join it, and as a producer, before you embark on a project or just about to start it, but preferably when you're at the scripting stage, we are able to sit down and advise you and tell you, okay, fine, you're thinking of this script. If you want to get into market XYZ, these are the things to factor in. These are the genres that are doing well in these spaces or in these territories and regions. So that is information we share with our producer partners who've signed up on our platform. And also, there's also a lot of training that we are going to embark on, and I'm sure Zandile and Justus will share that as towards the end of this webinar, whereby in those spaces, in the training spaces, we are able to advise you on how to craft your stories, how to sell your story, and also who to target with what stories. This is not in any way to interfere with your creative license, but also it's a way to guide you rather than shoot wildly, whereby you just write a script, pick a, like the spray and pray kind of thing, whereby you just pick a camera, shoot, and then you say, okay, fine, let me see where this film will go. No. We need to start relying on data. And this data is generated from the conversations we have with the buyers. It's also generated from the demand that we are getting from the buyers and the audiences who are watching this content. So in a way, it's data that is verified. I'd also like to mention, just to tie in with the question of training and producer training. And one of us mentioned about the publicity side of our content, whereby you have an amazing film or an amazing documentary or TV show, but something lacks in the marketing, whereby you're not able to publicize that content beyond a certain audience. So you realize that there's an amazing film from Angola. It could be dubbed into English, but because no one knows about it, it may not do too well in a certain region of Africa. So one of the things also that we are also going to touch on in our training sessions is emerging careers in the film industry. For instance, publicists. Publicists are such important people who help get our films or our TV shows out there, either by marketing them. Critiques. Do we have enough critics in Africa who critique the films that we produce or the TV shows that we produce, or we just serve the audience whatever we have at hand? So there are also all these emerging careers, social media marketers who understand the language of film, who understand audiences in different regions, who understand that for your film to do well, maybe it should go on Instagram rather than Facebook, or to create, if you're targeting a certain audience, maybe we should focus more on Twitter, So there are all these emerging careers that are there in film that maybe you might realize, you know what, okay, I've been producing content, but because I know so many journalists across Africa, maybe I should be a publicist or a marketer, or, and even it's small things like your key art, like the poster that you're going to sell your content with. Shileola said that you need to have an amazing photo shoot, it needs to draw people to want to watch your content. It's something as simple as this poster, what image is on it. Don't forget that your key art, which is your poster, will end up as a thumbprint on one of these platforms. So if you don't have a good, compelling poster that attracts people or has a bit of information, people may not watch your film. So we have a whole training, we have several training packages, not packages exactly, but sessions that we are going to be offering to producers. So just sign up and just see what's coming ahead for you with the ACOMAT platform. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Faith. There's a question. I think, Rowena has gone back to the languages and is asking which ones perform best when it comes to the indigenous languages. And this is not for Faith only. Toy, you can take this. Eugene, in your region, it's open to everyone.
Shall I go?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we've been finding Kenya's, in terms of language, we're going through an interesting metamorphosis, so to speak. For the longest time, what was considered good TV was when someone came with an English accent or a mix of British and English.
Yes.
And for the longest time, if you wanted to know what was premium content, they had the British and American accents. And then what was not premium had the indigenous languages. But it's very interesting because now, and people like Justus actually played a very big role in this because when he was head of NTV for a while, that they kept pushing us producers to stop bringing content in English. And you know, at the beginning, you sort of, you don't want your content to look cheap, you don't want to attract less money, but over time now we're seeing actively that the shows we make now are primarily in English. I believe there's quite a few times that Justus has sent us back with stuff going, you know, just go localize it, like make it ours. And so over time now it's become, we're finding that for me, at least all my productions now are primarily in Swahili for the local markets. But it's an interesting mix because I don't know if this happens with other countries where it's Swahili, but about 60% is English. So even if you're a foreign speaker, you can still follow, but it's still very localized for us. And we're finding that this works very well. And when we send it to the international markets, and maybe the distributors here will argue with me that doesn't actually work, we then put subtitles for the sections, the 40% or so that's in Swahili. And it makes for better watching because then you have, you know, you can always pick up an accent that doesn't belong. Because if the setting is a nice village or a street in Nairobi, but then the accents are heavily British with a mixture of American, I don't know what that accent usually is. So for us now, at least it's working very well locally here because the people love to listen to their own languages. The stories are more authentic. The delivery is better even for the actors. But I don't know what issues this presents on a distribution level. But at least for me, even when I watch South African content or when I watch Nigerian content, I love to see that authenticity when it comes out, and then I'll quickly follow the subtitles regardless. So at least that's how we are treating language on our end.
Thank you. Claudia, would you like to add?
Yes, I could add. It also depends on who you're giving the product to. For example, when we were working with Mnet, they would want 70% Afrikaans. If we're working with Mzansi, they want 80% Zulu or Sotho with only 20% English. And then just generally, everyone just accepts English anyway. So we've kind of I've done everything. I've done a little bit of Zulu, I've done just English, and we've done Afrikaans just to kind of be able to put our phones, you know, just so that the content can go somewhere. But I think that what is fantastic about what ACOMART is going to be giving to us, or the platform that they're going to be creating for us, I think it's not actually going to matter because it's going to go over the whole continent of Africa. Every language would be in demand. I think that English will probably be, because most people understand English, but then at the same time, depending on where exactly on the platform it is, people are going to want to go French language films, you know, Portuguese language films, and indigenous language films. So I think as producers, ACOMART has really just opened up a completely new world for us, so to speak. It is actually so welcome, this fantastic platform, because now we don't have to be constrained by what Mnet wants or what Mzansi wants, because they'll only take your film if you have this. We can actually be more creative because there's such a huge market out there that would want our content in whatever language we would want to produce it in. And I think that is just so amazing. And I want to thank Faith and her team for this initiative, because I'm getting so excited to think that finally, you know, we can dust off those DVDs and just get them out there and have somebody watching our films. And from the money that we can make from the films that we've made that nobody wanted, we can then start producing the right content. And therefore, this training is actually amazing, because if we can then sit down with the team and say, okay, this is our idea, and be guided in such a way that we know that when this film gets onto the platform, it will be watched by viewers, and that way we'd actually eventually be able to make money and therefore monetize. This is such an important thing for producers, something we've not had in the past. We've just been putting our heart and soul into our films. We've gotten our teams to work for nothing on promises that when we sell the content, we're going to pay them. And we haven't been able to do this. So I'm really excited that this, for what ACOMART is going to be doing for us. And I think in terms of language, just to go back to the answering of your question, I think that they must create those platforms. There must be French language films, indigenous language films, and English language films, and people should, the people that we are actually producing for will then be able to say which content they want. And as time goes on, we would then learn to say, now you know what, people are really wanting English, or they're really wanting Portuguese. We have a bigger market there. And then we produce for that market. And that is why this guidance and training is absolutely vital. And we're very grateful for this. Thank you so much, Faith, and your team. I'm looking forward to getting going. I'm getting all excited now. Thank you.
And thank you so much for that.
Can I just add something to that? Yeah.
Yes, Joy, please go ahead.
So I think for me, it's about just telling human stories. I think human stories are the same everywhere, irrespective of the language. I think it's about the authenticity of the stories. I remember growing up in Nigeria, we used to watch Indian movies a lot. I mean, it was Indian movies. We would just look at the subtitle, but there were stories that we could relate to, and so we would watch it. Now I have a group of friends who are hung up on Korean movies. You know, it's not their language, but they're good stories, and so they watch it. And so for me, I think as long as we're telling human stories, and humans are the same everywhere, Black, white, Caucasian, you know, what color it is, as long as we're telling human stories that people can relate to, as long as we have good production of those, you know, stories that we are telling, I feel like the language for me, it's more secondary in my opinion. If people can relate to the story, so you tell a story about somebody maybe who's lost their job, everybody somewhere can relate to that, you know, irrespective of what language it's said in. And then with technology now, we can now do the whole of dubbing, of subtitling, you know, whatever it is we need to then do to connect it to people. But I think first thing would be that we're telling stories that are authentic.
I love that. I love that you touched on human stories that appeal to people everywhere, because ACOMAT is about African stories by Africans for Africans. But then there is also the group of Africans in the diaspora who get forgotten about at times, who also want to preserve their African culture and heritage wherever they are in the world. So that is a very amazing point. Thank you. I have a question from the audience. Aside from film, what interest is there in African documentaries, talk shows, children's content, and sport content? This one is open to anyone who would like to put their hand up.
I'd like to respond to that. We actually don't have enough we don't have enough children's content in Africa. So there's a very big market gap there, and there's demand for it. And especially during this COVID time where a lot of schools are closed and children are at home, there's need for educational content and also entertainment content for children. So if you've been wondering, is there a gap? Like, where can I move into? Children's content is a very big space. The same goes for animation. We don't have African animation content, and there's very, very high demand for it. And animation cuts across territories. I mean, we watch stories. I mean, most of us, I believe, we grew up watching Disney. We started watching African superhero stories, you know, from Africa, and nice stories that in a way also that can be dubbed in different languages, indigenous language, so that we can preserve our African culture, and also languages that are in other regions like Francophone, Anglophone, Portuguese speaking Africa, and the diaspora as well. Documentaries, yes, there's need for documentaries. If you have any documentaries, there's demand for it. There are people who just love watching documentaries. And also sports. Sports is a big thing, especially in Africa. So all this content is in very high demand. The same goes for lifestyle shows, travel shows, cooking shows, you know. Our culture speaks in the food that we eat. I want to learn how to make a goosey soup. I want to know how to make pap and samp. I want to learn how to make ugali. I want to learn how to make biryani from the coast, you know. So all this content has a market. And don't forget that some of the buyers are broadcasters as well. And their audience also needs an array or a menu of different things to sample. So like for instance, in Kenya, there's a quota for children's content. Broadcasters are expected to have every week a certain number of hours dedicated to children's content. And I believe it's the same also in South Africa. And actually most most governments expect that broadcasters should also cater for children. And what a good way to preserve our culture when we can. I wish we grew up watching some of these African legend stories we used to read about when we were kids. Maybe it would be a good way to preserve our culture. Yeah, so we need all this content.
I agree with you, Faith, especially at a time where on the continent, everybody is talking about decolonizing education. There is a massive opportunity for good documentaries that talk about African history, African heritage, the stories that haven't been told. I have a question from the audience. What is the cost of ACOMART registration? And that answer is, it is totally free. In all currencies, it's free. Next one, which way can one market their language movies like Igbo movies in the world? Faith, I'm gonna ask you to take this one.
Sorry, I didn't hear that question.
Which way can one market their language movies like Igbo movies in the world?
Okay, so for Igbo films, of course, you'll be targeting an Igbo audience. So in terms of location, I believe Igbo is from Nigeria, but also we have a lot of Nigerians who live away from there. So in the diaspora, in other African countries. So you'd be able to target them through ACOMART, whereby we try and get partnership and linkages with content buyers who have access to these audiences in these spaces. The other thing, if your film is really good, it can be dubbed into, say, English, so that it can also open up your market to a wider audience, or it can be dubbed into Kiswahili, which is spoken by we have almost 100 million speakers across Africa and the diaspora who speak Kiswahili, or it can even be dubbed into French. So in as much as its original language was Igbo, and this is where now ACOMART comes in, we are able to help you monetize and accelerate your content. Yes, it's in Igbo, but maybe I speak Zulu and I connect better with it in Zulu, and you realize there's a market there. So we could do a dub version within Zulu, and that opens for you a new territory, but you still have your original piece of work. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Faith. And I'd also like to add that there are ACOMART representatives that in Southern Africa, West Africa, East Africa. So if you have at this point a need to speak to somebody, one way is to email discover@acomart.tv or go to the ACOMART website, where you will find contact details for the ACOMART representatives in your particular region. So ACOMART is open to discussions. Like we said at the beginning, the platform was formed to be the African answer to the African challenges in the industry. However, it doesn't end there. It's also about how, as a collective, everyone involved in the industry can contribute to the sustainability and the growth and the profitability of the industry. I have a question from the audience. As a filmmaker, how can I access funding for my film and dubbing to other languages? Panelists, I think we've spoken about funding, but if anybody would like to answer this one. But I think we haven't touched on funding for dubbing. Maybe Faith, you can take the dubbing aspect.
So if you work with ACOMART, some producers are quite proactive, so they have dubbed versions of their content. If we realize that your content is doing very well in a certain territory and it could open up an even bigger market, we work together and partner with the content producer, and we find a way to get that content dubbed so that it can also open up a certain market place. So that's a cost that we discuss with the producer, and we are able to pick it up and find a way to recoup it along the way because it's an investment as well. So don't be shy, but it also depends on how well your content is performing in its original language. Yeah.
Okay, and another question from the audience. Going by the theme of this webinar, how have our producer panelists managed to monetize their content, break even, and which platforms acquired their content?
Can I answer that one for you?
Yes, please.
Hi. Okay, so the one film I made, break even, it doesn't really happen. We did a short film, for example, and then the broadcaster that took it was Mzansi. They paid 80,000 Rand for the film, so if you're in South Africa, but that they also then determined what language it must be. Had to be sort of like 80% one of the indigenous languages and only 20% English. And then they would pay 80,000 Rand for the film. So on our first film, we didn't know how much we would be paid. So we spent 300,000 Rand on the film. And when we got 80,000, break even. But we became wiser, and we then everybody less, and we made the film for 80,000, so we could just break even. And then on the third film, Mzansi wasn't taking any more content. So we had the film ready, wanting to take to them. They were then funding films themselves and keeping them and not licensing anymore. So we didn't get to distribute our third film. But in terms of the platforms, that is why we're so happy that ACOMART has now come aboard so that we can have this platform for our films and hopefully not just break even, but make some money.
Wow.
To add to that as well, I think the reality is it's an ongoing conversation for film producers and filmmakers. It's an ongoing conversation. I don't have the actual number, but very limited number of filmmakers, make their money back immediately. And this is not peculiar to Africa only. It's a global issue. It happens in Hollywood. If you're not signed up to the big production companies in Hollywood, you would face the same dilemma. It's an ongoing conversation. So if I use my own production, for instance, the first production we did was a TV series in Hausa language. Hausa is one of the local languages in Nigeria. And we got Mnet. Mnet picked that up. And luckily, we made all the money back from just that one transaction and even some profits, And after the license to Mnet, we ended up also licensing to about 2 other local TV channels in Nigeria. So it was a relatively good project at the end of the day. The second project we did was a feature film. We were in the cinemas briefly. We didn't make enough money from the cinemas. And then we also then licensed to Mnet as well, and then got some money from there, but we still haven't made back all the money we invested in that product. And now we've, now uploaded it with ACOMART, and we're hoping that, ACOMART would perform the final magic, and then we make all the money back on that. And on the back of that, then because that's one thing with filmmakers, we never learn. We keep putting more money and more money. And so now we've gone into another production, and just this January, we've rolled out a third production, and now COVID has happened. We can't go into the cinemas, and so now we're really, leaning on online distribution platforms to be able to push that content out and make the money back. So the reality is that it's an ongoing conversation. And that's why for a lot of people, you need to be careful of the funding for the project. You need to be sure that you haven't tied down, yourself in a way that you begin to have even health issues, stemming from debt that you have to pay back. Because sometimes it could take you 5 years or more to finally recoup all that you've invested in a project. It's an ongoing conversation. And, that's why for a lot of filmmakers, we look out to get grants. And so I was happy for Claudia when she spoke earlier about a project that she got a grant for. At least with a grant, you're not paying anybody back. It's money that you have to spend. So it's a very delicate matter when it comes to film production, but that's the reality.
Okay. You can go, Eugene.
All right, yeah. I wanted to just add on this breaking even matter. For TV, for us, it's a bit different because I just want to give an example of how we run my production company. So from the very onset, when we produce a pilot, we only do one episode and then we go in and discuss with the broadcasters here. And we always ensure that we make our money locally before we even go to the distribution. So of all my 11 TV shows, I've broken even and made profit on all of them. And one of the ways we've done this is using volume. So every time we go because we are very aware that our budgets in Kenya and in Africa are very small, you can go around this by negotiating with the stations for volume, of course, dependent on what content you're producing. And when you negotiate for volume, what happens is then the economies of scale are in your favor. You can hire people on a monthly salary instead of on a daily rate. You can negotiate better with suppliers. You can plan for slightly longer periods of time. And so, because I always tell, when I speak to younger filmmakers who I meet, I always tell them, you can sit here and complain all day about the fact that it costs $100,000 to produce whatever you want to produce, and nobody's willing to pay you for that. But if whoever you're trying to sell to cannot make that money back, realistically speaking, there is no way you're going to be able to sell that movie. So then the business savvy thing to do would be to then go back and see how do you then reduce the scale of your production at the beginning at least, so that you have your workout and then eventually you can work for a better payday. So for us, we use volume to be able to navigate business-wise.
Wow, thank you, Eugene. And we've had some very good comments coming from the audience. Thank you so much, audience. I'd like to read this one out. Hi, my name is Sudha Singh. I am a producer based in Durban in South Africa, both TV and film. Our company is African Lotus Productions, and we had tremendous success with the South African movie, Kanda Sami's The Wedding. I am really looking forward to networking. I'm very interested in co-productions as well. It was good listening to you. And I would then like to encourage everybody that is on this webinar and to tell everybody else that we actually have a good networking opportunity on our hands. By registering on ACOMART, ACOMART has the details of everybody. ACOMART has a newsletter that ACOMART sends out to tell the people about upcoming events like the training and development session that Faith had mentioned earlier. And this is only the beginning. So as the community grows, as other topics come up, like networking sessions, for instance, ACOMART will be able to get the right people in the room for everybody to get an opportunity to contribute to the growth of the film industry in Africa. And next question, what content is out there for children and how can this be developed further? I think Faith touched on this. With the trend in innovation as a solution to development challenges in Africa, what opportunities are there or what content exists for telling the innovative solutions coming from the region? For example, the boy who harnessed the wind type of story from Malawi. Anyone? Anyone?
I think this is a challenge to producers who tell stories, they're stories that we need to tell. They're stories that we need to tell about our African solutions. Africa is a continent that's not just rich in history, but also in other facets. For instance, indigenous medicine. Like for instance, I remember when I was a child, I used to have a very bad allergy, and it happened when I was back at home in the village. And my grandmother just picked a few herbs, boiled them, and put them on my hand, and the allergy disappeared within a few minutes. But I don't even know what that herb is. But you can imagine stories that like those need to be told so that we can also preserve and also give opportunities to people who are in spaces that cover innovation. I remember, I think 2 or 3 years ago, there was a TV show in Kenya that used to feature young innovators in the STEM, in science, technology, engineering, and the mathematics space. And they would actually showcase the innovations that these guys were working on. But they had a comedian who was the host of the show. And it was funny, but you'd learn so much. Like, oh, really? I didn't know you could do that with the wheel of a bicycle, or I didn't know my battery can do that. So yes, there are opportunities to tell these stories, and it's a challenge to all the producers of this forum that we need to expand our territories. We can't just have rom-coms only and extremely melodramatic dramas on our subbed to our audiences. We also need to tell stories that also challenge us, thought-provoking stories, and also stories that also give lessons at the end of the day, but of course in a fun and not NGO non-preachy way. Yeah.
Faith, this is the final question that we can take due to time constraints from the audience. Why are we having more revenue sharing platform in Africa than outright licensing platform?
I think, in my view, it depends on the revenue sharing comes in on how the business, each platform has got its own business, or can I say business plan or a business model that they work with. There are those that are able to actually buy the content upfront. There are those that have to share the revenue because that's the model. So it's up to you as a producer as well to just identify the space and also the reality that works for you in terms of remuneration and pay. In my experience, there seem to be more revenue sharing models that are out there, but that does not mean that your content will not do well, because if you're confident in your content and it's popular, that means that the more people watch, the more money you make and the more opportunities that open up for you. So that's why I say that as producers, we need to start looking at the business side of film production or the business side of creating content. If you create a film and you wait for somebody to buy off, to license it for a year and pay you off, and probably you're targeting one of the big streamers, it might take quite some time or it might never happen. But what if you put that content out to, even if it's a revenue sharing platform, and you're making some money? And what if that content becomes popular? That means you make more money. So as producers, and that's why I say we need to start looking at this content. How much did you spend? Have you recovered your return on investment? As in, have you broken even? And how fast can you get your ROI back? So that it also gives you opportunities to explore and find other ways of getting this content out. And once you get your ROI, are you able to make more money from your first series or your first film to continue producing more films? So these are business decisions that you need to make as the owner of the content. Also, as producers, we need to consider the intellectual property side of business. I've met producers who have signed contracts and they've released all their rights to a broadcaster or to a certain institution or to even a platform. So what that means is that when you release all your rights and you've been paid, it means that you cannot claim any extra dollar or coin beyond what you have received. So you'll be saying that I produced film XYZ, and that's it. If it becomes a hit and makes 100 times more money than what you produced or what you are paid for, you cannot lay claim to that copyright. And that also goes into the business side of content. Who owns your intellectual property? If it is joint ownership, you have to agree where this content goes together with the person who owns the copyright with you. You have to negotiate with this person and agree that we are going to get this this content on platform XYZ. So when you're negotiating your contracts, or when you're discussing who owns the copyright, it needs to be a very clear and important decision. You can ask a lawyer to assist you. There are lawyers who specialize in intellectual property. In fact, that's just the best way to go. And also make sure that you get the best deal possible, because there's a certain creativity that you've poured into that project that you need to recoup, even if not immediately, over a period of time. So if you sign over your rights and later on you come and complain that I don't own this film or I don't own this production, but I poured myself into it, there's nothing much anyone can do. And most of the time you'll realize that when you're given a very huge amount upfront, you have to release, or rather relinquish, the rights. So this is a business decision you need to make as a producer, or a business decision you need to make with your partners and everybody else who owns the rights with you. So the ball is on the producer's court. What do you want to achieve with this content?
Thank you so much, Faith. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Would have been nice to continue talking, especially since Damien says, great webinar. Congrats to the organizer and panelists. Thank you so much, panelists. I would like to ask you to just, in closing, a couple of words to our audience. In closing, please. Claudia, would you like to start?
Yes, I'll start. I would just like to again thank ACOMART for this opportunity and the fact that we are really looking forward to networking with everybody and seeing how we can finally get our content out there. And to all the producers and filmmakers that are participating, I'd like to say, do not give up. I started on my feature film 12 years ago, and it is only this year that we finally managed to get the funding to get our feature film off the ground. It is a difficult road, and you must persevere no matter what. And in the interim also, while you were waiting to make that big blockbuster, make the little films. Take your camera and produce the little short films, because you gain your experience there and you learn from that. I am glad that I never just went into a feature film, because I think I would have lost my house, like we sometimes say. So never put your house up for that. It's don't do that, you know. It is very difficult to recoup your money, but do not also just sit around and say, oh, we don't have funding. Take your camera, make your short films. There are people out there that want to see what you have, and persevere, because in the end, you will achieve your dreams. That's why we're all filmmakers. Thank you very much.
Joy, would you like to go next?
Okay, I think for me, final words for me would just be that as filmmakers, it's a whole value chain. We can't do everything by ourselves. So ensure that you spread out. I understand in the early days, it may be tough thinking of how do I pay all those people? How do I pay the scriptwriter? How do I pay the lawyer? How do I pay the publicist? You can always have arrangements with those people. You can have some sort of deferred payment. You can look for people with like minds like you who would be willing, to do it even almost for free. But it always helps when you have, different professionals coming as well to contribute to what you're doing. That way it takes some of the stress off you, and also you're sure that you're doing the right thing that you can monetize at the end of the day. Because while we're doing everything, yes, we love to tell stories, but the reality is that we want to monetize, those stories as well. And so always ensure that you have people who have the skills in your corner, you know, who can sort of just put hands together with you and just keep at it. You may not get it right the first time, maybe not even the second time, but just keep at it. And there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And thank you once again, ACOMART, for having me. I've had a great time here today. I've learned a lot, and thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Trey. Eugene.
I'd just like to thank ACOMART again for arranging this. It's been very a huge learning point for me, and hopefully now I won't have to travel. And when I do, it won't be to shuffle around markets. It'll be to actually go on holiday. Thank you very much, and I think now more than ever we, for the rest of us producers and everybody who's joining, now more than ever our services are needed, and the work that we do is very important now. Thank you.
Thanks, Eugene. And Shilala, you have anything to say?
I'd like to say that I'd like to say thank you to ACOMART for the great idea, for the new innovation to integrate all filmmakers, producers to a buyer's market. That's a very good one. Secondly, I also like to say that to most producers, I know that in Africa there are challenges in terms of distributing or getting your content, you know, monetizing your content. But I've always been of the opinion that producers should always have a business mind point. They should have a business mindset. They should come out, understand that you're producing a product just the same way Unilever is producing detergent. You must see your content not in that scope of something washable, but you must understand that your content is also like a product that needs to be distributed across various platforms. Secondly, I would like to say that rather than waiting for the big one, like Claudia said, there are different models now, there are different mediums now that you can push your content on. Actually, social media enables producers to actually monetize faster than looking at the traditional models which we all used to play with, that's television, different forms of television mediums. We need to think in that direction. And another way that content is going, content is really going, is investigative documentary. The fact that there's so many things happening in Africa that has not been unearthed, we can think through that and begin to produce content in that regard. And I wish everyone great success in all their endeavors. Thank you once again, ACOMART.
Thank you. And Faith, word from you? She is on mute. Mute.
Sorry for that. So I want to say that African stories deserve visibility and an opportunity to be screened within Africa and beyond. African audiences deserve to watch stories that they can relate to. I also want to say that African producers deserve to get returns on their investment. Our African actors deserve to be stars and earn a decent living and be celebrated, not just in Africa, but beyond. So we need to develop more indigenous African platforms that serve our African needs for our Afrocentric content. So if you have any Afrocentric content, that needs visibility and you need to monetize it, I would encourage you to just have a conversation with us and we'll guide you on that. Thank you.
And my co-host, Justice.
Wow, lots and lots of learning to sort of take home, literally. But I think for me, 3 of them stands out. Your content is a product. Treat it as such. Know your rights, man. What are you giving out, and how can you sort of monetize it? Then lastly, I'd like to end up sort of picking up from what Toyin and Faith have sort of said. Let's tell authentic stories. Let's let them travel the globe. Let them shape the cultures. Let's inform more people. And at the end of the day, let's make the dollars.
I would like to thank everybody that is on this webinar right now. Thank you so much, panelists, for such an awesome discussion. Thank you to the audience for being a fantastic audience and for asking the questions that actually that contributed to the outcome that we have today. If you would like to, actually before that, ACOMART would like to hear from you. So please go to acomart.tv and ask any question that you would like to ask. contact anybody, any of the representatives in your region if you'd like to get in touch for a Zoom meeting, for instance. And just one last word from me, this is the beginning of something great. And if we all come together and create a community, we may end up with a movement that we cannot even dream about right now, but it needs each and every single one of us to participate and contribute to the growth of the TV and film industry in Africa. Thank you so much. It has been a wonderful afternoon and evening being with you. Bye-bye, everyone.